Breaking news, China naaktuhang mambabangga na ng mga barko matapos buwis-buhay makipaghabulan sa Pilipinas. Ayon sa nakalap nating impormasyon, kitang-kita sa bidyong nakuha na halos banggain na ng China ang barko ng Pilipinas. Sa bidyong inilabas ni Senate President Mig Zubiri, makikita kung paano sisingitan sila sa gitna na parang nananadya na mababangga ang PCG. Sa ibang anggulong inilabas na ating nakuha, makikita sa video kung papaano sila harangan sa harapan para hingan ng permiso ang Pilipinas na makadaan, na siyang tinutulan ng Senado sa pagdinig nung nakaraan na walang dapat ihingi sa China ng permisong makadaan dahil natin ng teritoryo at sila ang dapat humingi ng permisong makaraan.
Ito ang video ng muling pangharas umano ng China sa panibagong resupply mission patungong Ayungin Shoal ngayong araw. Makikita sa videong inilabas si Senate President Mig Zubiri ang barko ng China Coast Guard paspasang bumubuntot sa resupply ship. Sabi ni Zubiri, sinusubukan daw ng mga barko ng China na sumingit at tila gustong banggain ang supply ship at barko ng Pilipinas. Lubang mapanganib daw ang ikinilos ng mga barko ng China. Sa kabila ng pangharas na yan ng China, bandang alas 11 ng umaga, matagumpay na nakapasok sa Ayungin Shoal ang dalawang resupply boats. Dagdag pa ng source, hinarangan ng dalawang China Coast Guard vessel at 11 maritime militia vessels ang barko ng Philippine Coast Guard. Makikita din yan sa videong ito na inilabas ng Philippine Coast Guard. Makikita rin ang malapitang pagbuntot ng malaking barko ng China sa maliit na resupply ship. Sa isang pahayag, kinundina ng National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea ang anilay patuloy na illegal, agresibo at destabilizing na galaw ng China Coast Guard at Chinese Maritime Militia sa loob ng Exclusive Economic Zone ng Pilipinas. Binigyan din ng Task Force ng resupply mission ay administrative function at jurisdiction ng Pilipinas sa West Philippine Sea na nakasandig sa UNCLOS at sa pinal at binding na 2016 Arbitral Award. Ang AFP tinawag namang unprofessional at mapanganib ang galaw ng China Coast Guard at hindi raw ito mananaig sa legal at lehitimong operasyon ng sandatahang lakas na sumusuporta sa rules-based international order. Sabi ng China, wala raw permiso nila ang pagpasok ng resupply ships sa Renai Reef na tawag nila sa Ayungin Shoal sa loob umano ng Nansha Islands. Binalaan daw ng China Coast Guard ang mga barko ng Pilipinas at niregulate sila. May hindi raw makukwestiyon na soberanya ang China sa Nansha Islands kasama ang Renai Reef o Ayungin Shoal at tinututulan nito ang iligal na pagdadala ng construction materials sa BRP Sierra Madre na anilay iligal na nakasadsad doon. Dati nang sinabi ng Pilipinas na hindi nila kailangan ng permiso para makapasok sa Ayungin Shoal dahil nasa loob ito ng EEZ ng Pilipinas.
Subalit kahit ganito na nakalusot, hindi naman po pwedeng palagi na lang at patuloy yung paglabag ng China sa international law. So tama po yung ginagawa natin ngayon na makipag-alyado tayo sa international community na sa ganun matigil na po ito.
Bubulahin tayo nila na kaibigan daw sila natin. Tapos sa isang iglap, bubumbahin ng tubig ang ating mga barko. How can they convince us that they're sincere one day, and the next day, one day, and they shower a former president of ours with praises and assurances in Beijing, and shortly after, the next day, fire water cannons on our ships. At ang ganyang pagtrato, hindi lang ginagawa nila sa mga barko ng Republika ng Pilipinas, pero ang masakit, ginawa din ito sa mga baroto o bangka ng mangingisdang Pilipino. This incident, my dear colleagues, Mr. President, reaffirms the merit of the resolution that the Senate has unanimously passed last week. That resolution illuminates the way forward because China contemptuously ignored protest, all the more that we have to rally the world to condemn acts which have no place in a civilized order. This is a defining moment for this Senate. Today, we join the nation in standing its ground from the front in need be and longer from the rear. I want to go back to the picture that was shown on Philippines, again on Ayungin Shoal and Pag-asa. Mas malayo po ang Pag-asa Island kaysa Ayungin Shoal. Napakaklaro ng Ayungin Shoal ay nasa loob ng ating exclusive economic zone. Bakit? nagsasabi ang China na kanila po ang lugar na ito na napakalayo ng China, 600 nautical miles away from Hainan province. No rhyme, no reason, no logical explanation can say that is theirs kasi kakalabas lang po nila sa CNN at sinabi nila yan daw ay indisputable sovereign territory ng China. How can that possibly be? They're the only country that acknowledges that, Mr. President. No other country in the world acknowledges that they own that portion of the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea. China is a titan. That is a given, Mr. President. Their military expenditure alone is 70 times that of ours. We are even more dwarfed in terms of ships built. We are outmanned and outgunned. And the peace we seek will not grow from the barrel of our guns. But what we lack in force, we have law, and in goodwill sa puso ng ating mga kababayan. Diba? Kung sa basketball pa, sa FIBA, sabi natin, kaya ba natin talunin yung mga malalaking mga basketball teams? Ang sabi namin, lalabanan natin sila gamit ang ating puso. The international system remains one of law, Mr. President. And in this, we have the advantage. Might does not make right, Mr. President. Neither does it make fiction a reality. The Hague Tribunal is fully in our favor. So is the rest of the world. They cannot turn away, for they have skin in the game. 1/3 of global shipping passes through the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea. The world will not allow that it be turned into a Chinese koi pond. If China is left undeterred, they can and will put a chokehold on global trade. We welcome the influence of all nations who can help secure our seas. Despite all this, we have retained friendly relations with China amidst this dispute. Even in the midst of contention, we deliberate with them. Disagreements should not foreclose engagements. Pero yun nga sinabi ko noong isang araw, Mr. President, sa China, bakit napakahirap kang kaibiganin at napakahirap mong mahalin? Diba? Kung gusto mo makipagkaibigan sa ating bansa, ba't napakahirap gawin po ito dahil sa mga ginagawa po ninyong mga atraso sa atin. We have filed protests and note verbals, and again today, another note verbal was sent to Beijing. In the hundreds, Mr. President, too many to count, but enough, I think, to gift wrap its embassy here with the paper it was written on. Ganong kadaming note verbal yun. Although they have repaid our hospitality with hostility, harassment, and hosing down of our ships, we do not give up on the hope that it is weaned of its bullying ways one day, and that with the world's help and influence to finally recognize our sovereignty in our very own waters. By simply following the rules, my dear colleagues, particularly of the UNCLOS or United Nations Convention on the Laws of the Sea, as expected of a member of nations and a signatory to this, China can make the West Philippine Sea a zone of peace, a place of progress, and an example of coexistence. These recent events should define this Senate, and we must join the nation in standing its ground by being at the forefront of discussion and no longer the sidelines or from the rear. Although none of us here champion hostility nor endorse the very tactics that we condemn, but all of us here are tired of the status quo. Paulit-ulit na lang po itong nangyayari sa ating Coast Guard at sa ating mga mangingisda. On the search, my dear colleagues, for a better strategy, I urge the executive to run the point, using all the viable tools at its disposal, such as a possible joint patrol over the West Philippine Sea with our allies, and the ones we have enumerated in our adopted resolution. Sa ating magigiting na Coast Guard at mga sundalo, maraming salamat sa inyong katatagan at katapangan. Tulad ng ating taos-pusong kinakanta sa ating pambansang awit, sa manlulubig, di ka pasisiil. Babalikan ko po yan. Sa manlulubig, di ka pasisiil. Saludo kami lahat sa inyong serbisyo at sakripisyo at hindi namin kayong papabayaan lumaban na mag-isa. Kasama niyo kami sa pagtindig laban sa mga pilit na nanghihimasok sa ating bansa. At kasama nyo kami sa pagtindig para sa tunay na malayang Pilipino. I stand here today to stand with our Coast Guard men and women as they face hostile action by intruders right in our very own seas. I stand here today in support of our troops of the PRP Sierra Madre who have endured years of blockade by interlopers who mistakenly think that by denying our boys food, they will also bring down their morale. I stand here today in solidarity with our fishermen who have been blocked from the rich waters which are legally and historically ours by a swarm of gunboats dispatched from the Great Wall of Sand. I stand here today to articulate the hurt and hopes of a people whose rights have been trampled by a bully who refuses to stand down. We have been cautioned, my dear colleagues, not to meddle on matters which by some theory is the realm of the executive. We are often reminded that politics stops at the water's edge, meaning discussions on politics should remain within our borders. We respect that, Mr. President. We respect that foreign affairs is a business solely pursued by the President. But how can we not speak up when the very troops who secure our borders and stand on harm's way have been airing their disgust? How can we remain mute when one nation after another has been voicing out their full-throated condemnation of yet another provocation against our Coast Guard peacefully, let me repeat, peacefully navigating on our seas? How can we, Mr. President, not echo the anger of a people against heinous acts on the high seas, committed with impunity by a party squatting on territory that is ours if we want to be true to our mandate? Kung tikom ang bibig at bahag ng ating buntot, paano tayo magiging Senado ng taong bayan kung ayaw natin bigyang boses ang kanilang hinagpis? My dear colleagues, last week, provocative, illegal, and dangerous maneuvers by the Chinese Coast Guard vessel on a Philippine Coast Guard supply boat is the latest manifestation of its might versus right treatment of peaceful neighbors. It is a show of diplomatic duplicity, of professing friendship, but practicing hostile behavior, Mr. President.
Ngayon ikaw bilang Pilipino, ano ang masasabi mo at reaksyon sa balitang ito? Mag-iwan ka ng komento sa ibaba at atin pong babasahin isa-isa.